Yesterday, if you remember, we were discussing some of the problems with respect to the developmental politics in our country, no? So, yeah, please come on in. So, Pranab Bharzan highlighted that there are some strengths, such as we have a robust ITC revolution in our country, information and communication technology, which actually adds something to the human capital base. That is, we become more productive with the help of technology and so on. But he also highlighted some of the problems, such as the poor quality of physical infrastructure in the country, especially in the hinterland, rural hinterland. The poor quality of secondary education is highlighting, but the primary education is equally poor. That is not really good, no? Because ultimately, if you look at education holistically, primary, secondary, and tertiary, you will find that there is some kind of causal mechanism which works. If the primary education is good, you can build upon that and you can have better secondary education. And if secondary education is good, then gross enrollment ratio at the level of college and so on improves. People do not drop out because they know that education is important. Public health, I gave the example of coronavirus and the need for the intervention at that time. That is the first wave in May 2020 and later 2021 also. We realized that if we do not actually have a robust public health system, which is not run by profit, but in order to serve the society, we will actually be everybody was looking for oxygen, isn't it? And the whole thing was too much. So the concept of public good, for example, is very important to understand. In John Rawls, some of the works on justice, especially welfare state and social justice. Whenever you will read anything on welfare state or social justice, this concept will come up. What is public good? And I mean, social sciences, they are not really prone to have final definition, isn't it? They keep changing, but nonetheless, some working conceptual understanding what they entail is really important. So these are the problems. Sanitation, of course, one of the problems in India, and India is infamous for that, isn't it? Delhi is good, Indore is good, they say Chandigarh is good. Other than that, we have some of the most polluted cities in the world, in our country, isn't it? Air, water, pollution, as well as improper disposal of the solid and non-biodegradable waste. For example, in Delhi, you saw this landfill site, so burning, and that particular thing is not really good for the public health. So the environment is a key problem. Why he's highlighting that? Because now environment, wherever you are studying, you see the last chapter, the concluding portion comes up to the environment, isn't it? One or two passing remark, verbal homily to the issue of the environment. What does it refer to? The same thing that I was talking about earlier, that private profit and the greed motive. Again, to remind you of Gandhi, that the earth has enough for everybody's need, but not for everybody's need, isn't it? So all of these issues, Pranab is saying, they actually involve governance effectiveness. What does it mean? What is the difference between government and governance? Did you ever think about it? So, government.
The act of governing is the
Yeah. Government is a kind of entity, a thing, no, a form, a structure, an institution, isn't it? Governance is the process through which that particular thing works on the ground. So, actually, when we read Indian politics, if you remember, right at the start, I told you that it is not in isolation that we study one particular institution. Most of the times, even if you skim through this reading, you will find reference not only to the parliament but also to the executive and the judiciary, that is the prime minister, no? Evolving and revolving around the institutions as well as civil society and the general masses, isn't it? So, less or more, the static criteria to understand Indian politics is to always keep in mind the institutional composition of Indian politics, the key players, isn't it? That is the Supreme Court. So, for example, judicial activism is one of the key concepts, and we better get some grip of it. What does it refer to? Judicial activism. If you think about it.
Limited judicial participation in the function of
Anybody else?
the way by which the court itself will like refute the government, like this take its own stand against the government's like encroachment of our rights.
Anybody has any idea what is judicial activism? Encroachment in the public policy domain, violation of the separation of power between the executive and the judiciary. Is it?
Violation of our
What happens when the bureaucratic political mafia nexus doesn't respect the rule of law and they do not implement policies, for example, जानबूझ करके, deliberately they do not implement policies. In that case, the government, the judiciary comes up and takes the stand. Judicial activism, if you invert the word, activist judiciary, isn't it? Social activism, judicial activism. No? Judiciary becomes an activist, that is proactively pursuing the implementation and the evaluation of public policy on the ground. No? With the help of whom? With the help of the Comptroller and Auditor General of India. CAG came in the reading, no? CAG under Article 248 of the Indian Constitution is given the responsibility of auditing the public account either fully or partially funded by the government treasury, that is the consolidated fund of India and so on and so forth. So the next, if you go, of course, I was highlighting yesterday some of the, so yesterday I told you the story, of course, of Assam, Bihar, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh and other states, no? And the regional disparity in development. Any development discourse in our context, that is the context of India, will not be able to make sense if you do not highlight the urban-rural divide, number one, no? And number two, regional disparity, that is yesterday I was highlighting the lopsided nature, that is imbalance, developmental imbalance. So let's take a step back again today because we are regional disparity in the developmental discourse in India is important to understand. And what is the point of genesis behind that is important to understand. So if you look at the post-independent time, you saw that Jharkhand is part of Bihar, you know it, but these are resource-rich areas. And if you focus, Andhra, Telangana, Chhattisgarh, which was part of Madhya Pradesh, Bihar, Jharkhand, Uttar Pradesh, as well as Assam, Mizoram, no? Meghalaya, Nagaland, these are resource-rich areas, that is very rich in natural resources. No? They feed the country, isn't it? If you go to Rajasthan or Punjab or even further, you will find that this is an arid area, that is the semi-arid area, that is the rainfall is not a lot, isn't it? And all you can do is to query the marble and so on, but when it comes to diversity of natural resources such as iron, manganese and the raw material for the development, it actually comes from these states, such as you have steel plant in Bokaro, you have steel plant in Jamshedpur, and you have an oil refinery in Assam, for example. No? So what happened? The railways, the Britishers invented the railways so that they can pierce deeper into the country and transport away the raw material, no, and so on, to the global market, and to use that in slave trade also, which you will read in the future. So the problem is this: the resource curse. The problem of resource curse. Even Africa, for that matter, is very rich in natural resources, but the very virtue that you are rich in natural resources can backfire, because then people come looting your natural resources, and they just so you have the movies and so on these subjects, which you could go on to read. For example, and also Jammu and Kashmir is also prominent in the story, but Jammu and Kashmir is in the top rank. The SDI is high in Jammu and Kashmir. Okay, it's equivalent to, even better than Delhi probably. So Kerala, Jammu and Kashmir, Delhi, no, and Maharashtra. And other than that, up to some extent, but not, in my opinion, data you could find, Gujarat, Karnataka, they are developing not on their own. Obviously, at the cost of whom? They're taking the raw material, that is the coal, the iron ore, the manganese, the steel, the oil, and so on, from those states, and you are not in that very proportion returning them. Yes. Sorry, I could not. What were you saying? Labor force. Other than that, the highlight, the migration, distress migration of the unemployed young people from these states, now even in Jammu and Kashmir and other states in India. But the situation is really, really bad in West Bengal, number one, number two, Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, and the northeastern states, along with Andhra and Telangana. Andhra and Telangana in south also have not been doing very well. But if you look at the whole thing that happens in our country, sometimes we think that people in Punjab or Haryana or any other state, they have some kind of inherent strength. Of course, people have inherent strength, isn't it? People are not devoid of strength and power and the capacity to do whatever they want to do. But on their own, they will not be able to do much. It's the resource which is transported, and the treasury, the state treasury, doesn't reward those states, for example, Jharkhand or Chhattisgarh, properly. So you see the Maoist unrest in those areas, isn't it? Because you take away the resources, you do not give them anything, so they want what they deserve, and they then perpetual, what do they call it? Perpetual domestic civil war situation. Because ultimately now we are coming to this conclusion that when we study development, in crux it refers to the fight among the elites over the distribution of resources. No, who gets what, when, how, and what is the amount, isn't it? And in the movies you see Bandarmat actually a keyword, no? So people snatch away whatever they want to snatch. And yesterday I highlighted that when the state becomes poor, when the state becomes subject to robbery and theft, no, who suffers? It is the people. We people suffer because the state in which we live, it's not the province I'm referring to, the Indian state I'm referring to, the sovereign wealth I'm referring to. If it goes down, Indian people actually suffer, because then, if you remember Prime Minister telling during the coronavirus that we do not have a lot of money. Don't remember that, no? When they issue even rehabilitation of the orphans due to coronavirus. So 50,000 was set as a price, no? You saw the suicide of two young women and their mother, isn't it? So story development is not some kind of novel or fiction, no? Whatever you are reading here reflects in the world, and it has real repercussions for the quality of life that people lead and the opportunities that might open to you, or for that matter, the subject of development. We are subjected to development, no? So, uh, uh, so again highlighting some of the strength, but I think that is an empty signifier, not much, saying that India has this extraordinary state capacity in some instances, such as the organization of the largest election in the world by Election Commission of India, no? A constitutional body under Article 324, which does it. The world's second largest census, one of the achievements is highlighting, no? And other than that, some of the world's largest festivals, such as the Magh Mela and so on, which happens, and millions of people come rushing to those areas. So you did the reading. Did you find anything critical in the reading which you could not agree with, and you thought that this guy is just roaming here and there and everywhere? So he makes good sense. Now, actually, his thesis, I gave this Elizabeth Chatterjee's reading, and you know how she introduces Pranab Bardhan. Just that people were not taking him seriously, but then now Pranab Bardhan is being scrutinized to understand the politics of development, not only in India, but across the world. That is, formerly colonized countries specifically. And so extraordinary state capacity refers to the power of a state to do wonderful things, no? Successfully. For example, immunization program, no, refers to the extraordinary state capacity, manning the people, no? So universal immunization of the population against a particular pandemic, epidemic, or so on, could be added in that list also. The weak, what was he highlighting? The weak capacity, I think. What are the keywords? Somebody could actually help me out in this. All right, I think some of the problems he's highlighting without referring to that word: heterogeneous population, fragmented polity, no, extreme social and economic inequality. Extreme, he is using the word. This word is quite extreme, by the way. So, inequality is also a keyword in development literature, always at the heart of it. To understand that is why I'm taking a pause and trying to explain it to you. Inequality refers, also I remember, to the other class or to this class I highlighted. Inequality refers to fundamentally the inequality of wealth among the population. That is, the gap between those who have property, movable, immovable, and those who are dispropertied and dispossessed and expropriated. That is, they do not have any property at all, and they live hand to mouth, day-to-day basis. And if they, for example, lose their job or anything, they will have nowhere to go. And you might think that that's some kind of otherworldly story, isn't it? Doesn't belong to this world in which we live, isn't it? But if you look at the situation, the data, the statistics, you find that even today, 38% of the children in India are stunted, 42% wasted, and you have, of course, I come to the college and I see people lying on the pavement without any roof and so on. So, development, of course, normative, philosophical approach to development will always try to, first of all, have a view where we want to go, what do you want to do. That is to equalize, that is to ensure fair distribution of economic resources in the society. And then when you have your goal set, then you many ways to get to the goal, isn't it? Many ways, not one way. So, which one?
Each act of corruption, similar to
All right, all right. Similarly, and forward, isn't it? Where is it? Similarly, much of the police and bureaucracy are highly politicized. What does it mean?
They work under the influence of government.
Yes. Under the influence of government or under the influence of the politician working for a particular ideology, for a particular agenda, for example, a politician raven by vengeance, that I will avenge, I will take revenge, no, against my opponent or enemy, no. So he spends all his energy and the state capacity in doing that, and the story of the development and the story of the people fades away in the background, isn't it? So structural issue is highlighting. Bureaucracy, the word comes from Max Weber, the word. Without understanding the word, you probably will not be able to understand what this line entails. The word bureaucracy itself is the key here, and the word police, by the example, for example, I was giving you the definition of political theory. What is political? The word political comes from the Greek word polis, which means city, and the word polis also derives its meaning from the same root word, isn't it? So bureaucracy, bureau refers to the office, no? Cracy means rule by the office. But here Max Weber, when he refers to bureaucracy, he refers to the rational organization of the institution in terms of fixed, for example, principles of hierarchy and subordination and the chain of command and so on, so that everybody knows what they have to do and no one is in dilemma, isn't it? You are hierarchy probably you are not able to make sense of, but in the rational organization, for example, of any institution, even your family, no, somebody needs to have the final say, so that if there is any dilemma, collective action problem, that problem gets vetoed, no, and stands for the movement resolved, isn't it? Somebody will have to actually intervene in a situation wherein you have this awful situation of indecision, dilemma, and not being able to decide what to do. So corruption in India is also here. The bureaucracy referring to the hierarchy, rational organization. When I refer to rational organization, I'm referring to actually rule-bound organization of the institution. For example, what you as an officer, for example, if you go to serve the state, will have to do, you must know it beforehand. Nobody should be telling you what to do, isn't it? Code of conduct and rules, you must always know you know it, what you have to do, and then you go on to do it. No? But if the society is orthodox, traditional, I'm just extending now the argument why the corruption in bureaucracy, quote unquote, no? The where does it come from? No? Bureaucracy, I told you, refers to the Max Weber's rational, institutional organization, no, of the affairs of the state, no. Where does the corruption come from? He goes on to say that societies are of two types. One is the rational society, modern society. The other one is charismatic and superstitious, orthodox. Charismatic, the word charismatic, you might be dazzled by the word, refers to impressionist, exhibitionist. When somebody shows you something for one flash and you are impressed and you think that, okay, now, for example, you call a person a charismatic leader, no? That charismatic leader exercises influence over you by invoking sometimes tradition, at other times superstition, sometimes affiliation to identity, caste, creed, religion and language, and that very irrational introduction of those feelings in the discourse leads to corruption, because how much meaning can you make out of them? They are not in the rule book, isn't it? When, for example, you go to a particular office and a person is not committed to public service, but committed to some godman or some anything else, isn't it? The emergent affiliation, to be more precise. How would you be able to make sense of it? So the root of the corruption lies in the orthodoxy, in the superstition, in the hearsay, and in the make-believe that people do. Otherwise, the book is clear, black and white. You could read it word by word, and you get to know what you have to do, isn't it? You don't need a messenger, an angel today in modern times. The whole thing you could be reading and interpreting with the help of your own cognition, isn't it? So, corruption in India is a big problem, but corruption is a problem in general in every capitalist democracy. India is not to be scapegoated alone in that particular thing, isn't it? There are even more corrupt countries around the world. For example, warlords, the concept of warlord. A particular diamond miner goes to Africa, meets the dominant leader of the particular community, and says that I am giving you that particular amount of money, you give me this amount of men, and for that amount of time, and in the meantime, while I dig the gold and the diamond, you give me security, and if anything happens, for example, if any other community comes and stakes the claim, you have the responsibility, thus inducing that particular society to engage in civil war. Rampant civil war in Africa, for example, because of the resource curse and the. So there is this movie, if you could find time, Blood Diamond. You could just watch that movie. Okay, the story of the diamond tear and the bloodbath that ensues. No, so the land is yours. No, and whatever lies below the land is rightfully yours till the time you are there as a human being. But imperialist comes and says that I will dig, and even if you touch one kernel of diamond, obviously I'll kill you, isn't it? So the story is less or more same. This development discourse is quite amazing and illuminating. The words are difficult sometimes, and so one of the problems that Pranav highlights now in today's time, contemporary time, which I was a little bit hesitant not to comment upon, but the Prime Minister's office now is more centralized. That is, what is democracy, and what is the relationship of democracy with development? That is why you will find papers, democracy and development, full one semester paper offered at the MA level, PH.D level, MPhil level to study for 6 months, democracy and development. No, what is the connection between democracy and development? So there are theories, and the most prominent among them is Amartya Sen's theory, development as freedom. Amartya Sen was awarded the Nobel Prize. You know what was the thesis? One line on which he was given the Nobel Prize? That if you have democracy, you will not have famine. That is, if you have effective democracy, wherein people can speak and express their voice if they are distressed, you will not be able. You will not have a famine, because then people will tell their story, and governments will recognize because the democracy is functioning. No, so that was 1998. Democracy enables development through discourse about the goal and the various ways of going to that goal. No, so you sometimes actually democracy. Pranav also said that the fight, the inner conflict, and the perpetual war between the elites leads to democracy, but it's preposterous, and to me it itself contradiction in terms. How can it promote democracy if leads to indecision, an impasse, deadlock? No. Democracy also refers to decision making, quick decision making. Also, some people say that democracy is slow, but of course, it's a particular kind of democracy which is slow. Democracy itself is not slow. So, representative democracy is slow, deliberative democracy is slow, direct democracy is slow. No, democracy as such, probably we need to think more about it before giving sweeping remarks. For example, that democracy is there is other thesis. The democracy supports development, and the opposite thesis is that democracy leads to indecision, slow decision-making process. Some people cite the example of China. Could develop so quickly because there was dictatorship and one man could just say what I want to do. Nobody would raise their head, no? Other than that, the East Asian countries also, they are thought to be state developers. So, what is the exact word was developmental state. South Korea, Japan, and initially Taiwan, Singapore, their developmental discourse in their country, initially they are thought to be developmental states. That is, they intervene, but they were also dictatorships. So here in our country, the biggest problem, in my opinion, in our country is this big demography. It's not a problem. It's the solution also lies therein. If you improve upon it, then we can be the workforce of the world, isn't it? Which we are aspiring. But leaders and politicians these days, they are too much busy looking for salvation, by the way, which is not easy these days, isn't it? You in politics, you will not have salvation, isn't it? You will have history probably written for you. Maybe sometimes you will write your own history, but at other times, other people will write and they will judge you. No, so if you deserve appreciation, they will appreciate you. If you deserve criticism, castigation, you will rightly get whatever you deserve. So that's all from my side. We'll be going slowly only, okay? And I will be taking up Gandhian approach. And the key word in Gandhian approach to development is decentralization. Local organization of the economy, small scale economy, no? Which is environment friendly also. No? So if you would be just curious about it, we'll be discussing it.